Hi, I'm Michael Wan, your host for Michael Wan's Op-Ed Live, and this is Jeffrey Prang, our proud LA County Assessor. So, Jeffrey, I know that you are always attuned to what's going on in this political world. Now the shutdown is happening. It's in its 20th day. What is your thought?
I'm like everyone else. Doesn't matter whether you're left or right. Everybody's concerned about the shutdown.
Yes.
It is denying the public vital services. It is denying a paycheck to 800,000 federal employees. They need to agree to reopen the government. And my recommendation, if I had a magic wand, I would say pass a temporary funding of the government and continue the discussion on border security over time to see if they can come up with consensus. Because there's not consensus right now. They're nowhere near consensus, and it is unfair to the public, it's unfair to these employees to have the government shut down.
What did you think about Trump's speech on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Western time, and also Pacific time, and also Nancy and Chuck Schumer's rebuttal? Well,
I think that frankly, it was appalling. It essentially was a campaign speech paid. Trump asked the major networks to pay for him to do his campaign stump speech. He didn't offer any new information. He simply gave the same talking points he's been giving since he was first running for president. He offered no solutions. He was probably the first president ever to use a presidential address rather than trying to bring people together to combat our fears. His whole speech was, be very afraid. I thought it was inappropriate, and I don't think the networks should give him free airtime to give a campaign stump speech. I thought Chuck Schumer and Speaker Pelosi were measured and appropriate in their response. Their view is, the wall is your position, it is not ours. We are a co-equal branch of government, and we have to come up with a compromise which we both can live with. But right now it's a zero-sum game for both sides.
Yeah, so I think this whole thing happened because Trump couldn't get his border wall from the budget, right? He wanted the border wall, $5.7 billion included in that entire budget plan. But the Democrats who holds the House right now refuse to do that. So that's why Trump is using a different route, I think. I don't know whether we talked about it before, but I think Trump is going to declare national emergency. And with that, he can use some of the budget money that was allocated to defense. And he's going to probably use, I heard the number could be around $20 billion that the Pentagon can use freely in a way. So he's going to use that money to build up the wall. Of course, there's going to be lawsuit involved, like when he had the travel ban going on, there was a lawsuit that was filed from one of the circuit courts, right? But eventually Trump won, in the U.S. Supreme Court decision. So I think that the same thing will happen on this. I think this whole thing is a show. I think the Democrats and the mainstream media, I always tell you, they're in the same lot. This time, they even use the same word, manufactured. They keep on saying manufactured crisis. I put our title, today's op-ed title, manufactured, is the border a manufactured crisis? I do not think that it is a manufactured crisis. I know some people who are directly involved in these kind of heinous acts committed by illegal aliens. So I don't think what they're claiming is correct at all. It is not manufactured. Nancy Pelosi used that word in her rebuttal. You saw that. And Chuck Schumer used it. And if you watch the mainstream media like CNN, MSNBC yesterday, ABC, NBC, CBS, I watched all of them. They use that exact same word, manufactured crisis. To me, it's kind of unbelievable. Do they take some kind of marching order? How can they use the exact same word? I don't even understand that. Go ahead.
Probably the same way Fox does, because Fox does the same thing. They use the same talking points
there's
all the
only
way through.
Fox. There's only Fox.
So
you know that.
there's a lot to unpack there that you just said. So first of all, the president does have the authority to declare a national emergency. Under the law, it's unclear what constitutes a national emergency because it doesn't specify.
But the president can specify that. That's what the Constitution says.
So it's open-ended. So there will be room for litigation to determine whether it's a real emergency But it's not a real emergency. He just said, I need the money, so the only way I can get it is to declare an emergency. Secondly, even when declaring emergency, that does not give him authority over the budget. The Congress of the United States in the Constitution is the funding agency. They are the ones who get to decide how much money will be spent and where it will be spent. They can spend it based on the president's recommendation, but he is not in charge of the money. Congress is. So it would be unconstitutional for him to take money out of defense to put it into the wall. It'll be really interesting to see how he is able to come up with a rationale as to why military dollars, which should be used in Afghanistan and Iraq and against ISIS, so should be to be diverted to our border. The other thing, I do absolutely believe this is a manufactured crisis, because by any statistic you measure, immigration across the border is down. The impact of terrorists and other types of hardened criminals coming across the border is not coming across the Rio Grande. They're coming in through air. They're coming in through
everywhere.
Through everywhere. But there's a reduction in immigration at the border. Now, Democrats are not against border security, but the wall is a childish, simplistic answer to a complicated policy solution. Democrats have been willing to put $1.5 billion on the table for enhanced border security, but building a big concrete wall or steel slats or whatever you want to call it is false. Even Trump was willing to negotiate a couple of weeks ago until Fox called him out on it, and suddenly he decided to dig in and create this crisis.
So I don't think that way. I think that's what the mainstream media has been playing, that Trump was willing to negotiate, but now then he dialed back because of Fox. Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter called him out. I don't think that's the case. I think he was planning this from the beginning. I think this is how this is a negotiation skills or tactic that he has been using. I do think it's a it is a crisis. It's a national crisis. Look at this crisis on the southern border. This is from ICE. This is in ICE data from 2017 to 2018. 4,000 homicides, 100,000 for violent assault, 30,000 for sex crimes. And in 2018 alone, 800 gang members apprehended. That's a 50% increase from fiscal year 2017. And 122% increase in fentanyl, that's a drug opioid, being smuggled between ports of entry at the southern border over the last year. And I'll just add one more. 300 Americans are killed every week from heroin, and 90% of the heroin comes from our southern border. So to me, that is a national emergency. It's been going on for decades, but previous presidents, I'm going to even include Ronald Reagan, they have all ignored this problem. That's what it is.
Ronald Reagan helped to create the problem, because one of the big issues that happened with illegal immigration stems back to 1986, when Ronald Reagan, it used to be that if you were an employer who hired undocumented aliens, you could be prosecuted and go to jail. And they used to prosecute them and send them to jail. Then Ronald Reagan said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. I want to protect all of my wealthy agricultural business buddies. They stopped doing that, and they put the blame on the immigrants as opposed to the people who hired the immigrants. And so suddenly, it used to be, prior to Reagan, there was about 1 million people who came in every year to work the fields in California and Arizona, to pick strawberries, agricultural work, and then they would go back. After Ronald Reagan, they stayed, and more people came because there was no penalty for hiring undocumented aliens.
I think
we need to go back to employers need to be, if we're serious about this, we need to hold employers accountable as the people who are doing the hiring as well as the people who are seeking to be hired.
Do you think Ronald Reagan created, like you said, that Ronald Reagan created this crisis because he also used the amnesty bill? Do you think that also created this mess? Many people say that, both left and right, I think. And I agree with that too. I think because of that amnesty, I know that so many illegals are coming here for hoping for another amnesty. Why wouldn't they?
I'm certain that is a factor.
Right.
If there's a belief that from time to time that undocumented aliens will be normalized, then a lot of people will roll the dice. So that I'm sure that's a contributor.
And you said there was no prosecution going on either during his term, right? About hiring illegals.
Employers.
Yeah,
employers. They
that's
reverse course.
So whether you were a Republican or Democrat, the establishments, especially the big fat cats, they loved it. They loved those cheap labor.
Yes, they do.
Right?
So there's a real dichotomy within the Republican establishment because you have the
Yeah,
wealthy business people who want to make money off of cheap labor.
A lot of Republicans like it, actually.
But a lot of the voters are, they want them there. They want the products that are provided by cheap labor, but they don't really want the people who are doing the work to be in their neighborhood. So, but if you were to go to like meatpacking,
but that goes both ways. We know that, right?
If you go to meatpacking factories, many
of
of them in the
illegals,
South are just full of undocumented aliens, and they are being paid for by major companies that we all know, products that we all buy,
and even farms, right?
But you never see the federal government going after those employers, saying, we need E-Verify.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Jeffrey. But I just believe that. So Trump, you agree that Trump is not a traditional Republican, right? A lot of Republicans still have their, the establishments, they still hate him. Mitt Romney wrote a column at the the Washington Post, and Bill Kristol, the founder of Weekly Standard, a conservative paper. All of these establishment people, and even
he's not a conservative; he's a populist.
Yeah, exactly. So
he's a nationalist.
He's a nationalist. I would agree, and he's a populist. But I think because there was this huge blowback in year of 2016 because we have never heard a presidential candidate talk about these issues. Right. I have never heard it. So he mentioned those, and people were like, people who never voted in elections and who were not involved, they were suddenly saying, "Oh, this guy might fight for us." So I think he is exactly doing what he is saying. At least you're agreeing that he's trying to keep his promise, right? From his standpoint, right? He said he was going to do this.
He said he was going to build the wall and that Mexico would pay for it. So nobody's holding him to account on that one.
Okay.
Nobody's holding him to account saying, well, you said Mexico would pay for it. Now they're blaming Congress, who is not Mexico, and saying Congress should pay for his wall that he said Mexico was going to pay for.
So according to the data, for a year, the economic effect that illegal immigration is causing America is $500 billion per year. So what Trump is saying is, if you build a wall, you can just block these detrimental effect, and just by that you are paying off the border, and it's only $5.7 billion. You know how America's spending, helping other countries outside of America, more than $100 billion, and it's only $5 billion, and they can't even do that.
But here's where I think there's a big difference between Donald Trump. Not all Republicans agree with Donald Trump on this one, and the Democrats. The Democrats' view is, yes, we need border security, but border security is complex and nuanced, and it requires many different strategies. A big concrete wall or a big steel slat wall is not going to solve the immigration issue.
But Israel says it works. Israel says it works.
But Israel is a very small country with a very small border. We have our border along the Texas-Mexico border could probably encircle the entire state of Israel. So we have fences, we have border security, we have electronic surveillance, we have vast stretches of desert that are an impediment, and we should secure the border. But building a wall is a waste of money, and it will not accomplish what he's trying to accomplish. It is a simplistic representation of stopping immigration. It is not an effective tool, and $5 billion could be spent to provide health care to children in this country.
I completely disagree on that. I agreed with you on the Reagan part, but I completely disagree. I think the drugs are coming through the southern border. It's not flying through here.
Not most of them.
Through airplane, you can't. It's
most
hard.
are coming through our ports.
Yeah, I mean from our southern border. So look at this. White House data. It says 300 Americans are killed every week from heroin, and not just that. The death toll is equal to the number of American troops that were killed every week in Vietnam during 1968. So I think this is equally a national emergency situation, and I definitely think Trump should do that.
Well, I have to say that I have to reject your source. White House information is Fox News propaganda.
No, it's not. It's not.
It is not based on actual
these
statistics.
These were ICE. These were ICE data. The numbers that I just gave you, these were ICE. Do you think ICE just
I think these are selective numbers. I think they're spun. I don't think they tell the true story. If you look at drugs and immigrants coming across the border, it is not people walking across the desert, the Rio Grande.
This was from CBS, not Fox or White House. Look at this. 1 in 3 migrant women who tries to cross the border gets sexually assaulted. And you know what CBS said? This is what Trump said on Tuesday, and CBS fact-checked Trump. They said 4 out of 5, 80%. What do you think about that? They're getting sexually assaulted. 4 out of 5 migrant women who tries to cross the border get sexually assaulted. So to me, this is not just protection for the American people here, but the people who's trying to dangerously cross the border.
I am not going to dispute the fact that there's all types of terrible things that we need to address in terms of the current border concerns. What I am saying is that a wall is not going to solve all these issues as simplistically as Trump is saying that they will. Other strategies are more effective and more
But you said Israel is a small country, that's why it works. But America's a big country, that's why it wouldn't work. But some are natural barriers.
Well, I'm also not going to say it works in Israel, because Israel, they built big walls, has created a lot of, has created some challenges. They've created environmental challenges. They've created access challenges for people from Gaza or from Palestine who are trying to work there. It is not an elegant solution. It's a rather blunt solution, and I'm not certain that's one that we want to use as our example.
Okay, to me, it sounds like it's going to work. Okay, like let's give an example for Korea, for instance. We're divided to South and North Korea, as you know. It's always on the news. North Korea is always on the news.
We could put landmines if that's what you're suggesting.
They have landmines too, but before the landmines, they have a long fence. A long fence with a bunch of soldiers there, and even American troops. You know that 27,000 American troops on the border. So, do you think that would be a better solution? Do you agree that we have to do something, or we should just see, let those things just go by and say this is not an emergency? We should just live by our lives and take the hit.
Well, we're not at war with Mexico, so we don't have the same security concerns that we do with North Korea. What I am saying is that I think both sides agree there is a need for additional border security. What we are saying is that a wall is an overly simplistic and ineffective tool. There are other things that could be done better, and the amount of money that he wants to spend on this will not get the outcome that he wants. Okay,
so Trump and Nancy and Chuck, they met again yesterday, right? They met yesterday, not again, yesterday, and there was only like a 20-minute meeting, and Trump left and said bye-bye, and Chuck accused Trump of having a temper tantrum. He hit the table and something like that, and Trump said he didn't hit the table. But what I'm saying is the Democrats, they're not offering any other solutions. If they have a better solution, then why don't they counteroffer? But there is no counteroffer here.
Here's the way our government works. Congress is in charge of the budget. The House of Representatives has passed a budget with about $1.5 billion for border security. The president may offer, he may advise, he may suggest, but he cannot compel Congress to give him the authority over the budget. Congress is in charge of the budget. So he has to persuade them, and he has not persuaded them. He has not persuaded the Democrats that a wall is the best way for using that money and for securing border security. The onus is on him. It is not on the Democrats.
So, but what do you think about this? Last month alone, this is from Department of Homeland Security. Last month alone, more than 20,000 minors were smuggled into the United States, and 7 in 10 migrants have reported being victims of violence along the journey, and an average of 50 children a day have required emergency medical care at the southern border. And Houston Chronicle reported this. Houston Chronicle said, immigrant death rise sharply along the Texas border. So I think these are all alarming,
they are alarming, but you're presuming that having a physical barrier there will suddenly make those things go away, and it will not.
I think it would give a mental block to those people. People would assume, if there's a wall, they can't cross through. Because there are obviously a lot of people, a lot of illegals trying to cross the border, not overstaying. I'm not talking about visa overstay. That's a completely different issue. E-Verify, that's a completely different issue. What I'm saying is there are a lot of people coming through the southern border, especially drugs. Don't we have to stop the drugs at least?
But most drugs, most undocumented aliens do not cross the border. They come in through our ports of entry. They come in through by ship. They come in through by airplane. They come in through other means legal or
I'm
illegal.
not saying we don't
And
have
so,
other routes.
So
yeah.
but a wall is not going to be a cure-all to
But
these
you know
issues.
that there are people who jump, and there are some parts on the southern border. I watched a lot of documentaries regarding this issue, and there are some areas where there's a big hole on the fence, and you can just,
Yes.
just go through it.
Right.
And there's tons of them, and during the Obama administration, there was they told them to stand down. Obama told them to stand down. So they couldn't even use any weapon. They couldn't force them to go out. So they just kept pouring in. So to me, this doesn't make sense. What kind of country in this entire world allows these things to happen? I only think only United States. I don't know any other country that allows. I don't think Russia would do that, or
Mexico?
Mexico doesn't. Do you know
Central
Mexico is
Americas?
very? Do you know Mexico is
how about
very
Co-
harsh
How about Colombia?
to illegal?
Colombia
illegal
has
aliens?
a million Venezuelans living in their country today.
In Mexico, they immediately deport you or go to jail.
No, they don't.
They do.
They came all the way from Honduras all the way up to the northern
So
border.
they let them go through because they're trying to go to America. Not if they tried to stay, they would deport them.
So
that's a difference.
So I am not defending illegal immigration, and nobody is. No Democrat is defending illegal immigration. We are the goal is to come up with sensible policy. By no measure, by no standard, is a big, huge wall sensible policy, particularly at the cost of $5 billion. And it will not accomplish the goal because the impact of illegal immigration isn't a bunch of people running across the border at the Rio Grande.
And I reject the fact that the mainstream media, they always try to lump the legal immigrants like me. I had to wait, to get green card and all those process visa and all, go meet the lawyer and all that kind of stuff. I went through all that. I know a lot of, legal immigrants. But now it seems like LA Times or New York Times or Washington Post, CNN, they try to lump us together with illegal immigrants. They don't even use the term illegal immigrants. They just put immigrants. And they're saying, hey, we're supposed to be on the same team. No, I don't want to consider myself on the same team with the illegals. They're breaking the law immediately right off the bat, and they can't get a proper job. You know that.
Well, clearly,
clearly
there's a difference, but
completely
I
wrong.
disagree with your premise about the mainstream media. I think the Washington Post, the New York Times, the LA Times.
You don't think they use immigrants?
I think they
the same term?
I think they report the facts that are quantifiable and researchable as
But in
opposed to
many
Fox
cases-
News, which makes stuff up.
But in many cases,
lies.
if you look at LA Times, if you read the LA Times, I read it daily because it's what they
As do
report on. LA Times tends to write immigrants. They don't even put the word illegal there. I do see a huge difference. Years ago, they didn't do that, but now they're trying to lump us together, and I don't want to be lumped together. That's what what I'm saying, right?
I do know what you're saying, and I agree with you. I don't get that. I read the same LA Times that you do. I don't get that impression. I think the LA Times does a pretty fair job in reporting the
But
facts
the
and the
title,
stories.
if you look at the title regarding this issue, regarding this illegal immigration issue, they don't even try to use that word illegal. They don't even use undocumented that much these days. They just put immigrants, like they're just immigrants. So if you hear that term immigrant, it's like, oh, they're supposed to come here. It's like they're going through this legal process, and it gives a wrong impression. That's what I'm saying.
Well, clarity is important. I don't have that same impression. I read that same newspaper that you do. That's not my impression at all.
Okay, all right. So what do you think is going to happen in the future? Okay, we already showed our opinions to our viewers. What do you think will happen?
I think it's. Well, I think Mitch McConnell needs to do his job. The House has passed.
I don't think he's going to pass it. You
Well,
agree,
he
right?
says yes. He says he's not going to. But the fault lies there because there's three different. There's two branches of government. The way the legislation works, the way the budget works, is the House has to vote it, then the Senate. Yeah. So Mitch McConnell should allow an up or down vote on that proposal. The reason he won't do that, one, I think he's a coward. He doesn't want to do anything that might annoy or poke the bear, if you will, with Donald Trump. He's also nervous because he has probably a half a dozen members of his caucus who want to end the shutdown. But the way the process should work, the way it was designed to work, is the House votes, the Senate votes, they send it to the president, and he either signs it or he vetoes it. Okay. This negotiation between Nancy and Chuck and the president is not the way the system is supposed to work. Mitch McConnell and the U.S. Senate has to do their job and vote on the budget up or down.
Okay, the reason why I'm with Trump on this issue is it has never worked. Nancy has been there for decades. Chuck has been there for decades. They have never came up. They never came up with an resolution or any kind of bill to protect the border. And actually, they were for fences and stronger borders back in 2009. If you look at their
they still are.
If you look at his speech, back in 2009, Chuck Schumer said we can't let these illegal immigrants. He even used the term illegal aliens, not even undocumented. He said these illegal aliens shouldn't be crossing, and even Obama himself said back in 2012 that you can't let these people come in undetected, undocumented, and unchecked. These are words from them.
Yeah,
so
President Obama was very tough on immigration.
Trump is offering a better solution, in my opinion.
Well, that's the problem. Therein lies the problem. He thinks it's a better option. They don't. And they both have spoken out against about illegal immigration. Chuck Schumer, what he's saying today is no different than what he said 10 years ago. And they put $1.5 billion in the budget for border security, which Trump has rejected. They have never said that they're against border security. Everything they've said throughout their careers has supported that, and they put their money where their mouth is. Trump is rejecting their budget.
So you were talking about 800,000 people, federal workers, that they're not getting their paycheck. They said, Vice President Mike Pence said that they will get their back checks. So they will get it back. But
some of them will. Those who are working without pay will get paid. Those who are furloughed at home will not.
But you know who can't get their money or who can't get anything back? The angel moms and angel dads, the ones that the mainstream media completely ignores. That's why I call them fake news, because they don't cover these. I'm talking about angel moms. That's what I'm saying. You don't know. You don't even know. The angel moms and angel dads, who are they? The people who were killed by illegal immigrants, and their dads and their moms, like Jamil Shaw and Kate Steinle's dad. You know Jamil Shaw's story? It is so sad. Jamil Shaw, he's a African American. His son was a rising star in football, in college football, and he was in high school football, and he was supposed to get scholarship in Stanford and all over the place. So he was this rising star, but one day he was out, and Jamil Shaw, his dad, and I'm talking about Jamil Shaw Jr., what happened to Jamil Shaw Jr. So Jamil Shaw was at home, but he heard a gun noise, and he immediately felt something was wrong, and he went out, and he saw his son bleeding because of gunshot, and he was holding him, and he died in front of his dad. And I think that is a tremendously tragic story, and I don't think they even captured that bad guy. And do you know what his wife was doing? Jamil Shaw's wife's name is Anita Shah. Anita Shah was fighting in Iraq. So we're trying to protect people in Iraq, but how come we're not protecting here on the border?
But the federal government doesn't pay the budget, the furloughed employees, and the budget shutdown doesn't deny those victims money. They're not compensated.
No, then what do you think is the best solution? Like, for instance, Kate Steinle, she got killed by an illegal immigrant who got kicked out 5 times, deported 5 times, but came back the 6th time because we have a sanctuary law intact. What do you think about, what do we do to prevent this? Yeah.
President Trump does not have the support in Congress for his proposal. He does not even have enough support within the Republicans, within the Senate. If the Senate were to do their job, he is not going to get that $5 billion no matter what. That is simply not in the cards. He needs to accept the money that the Democrats have proposed and then argue another day for more.
Right.
If he decides to do nothing, then we're going to be at an impasse for a long time.
Okay, I understand what I understand where you're coming from. So I don't know what's going to happen. I want to talk about what's going to happen. What I think is going to happen is I think they're not going to agree on anything. They're not going to agree on anything. Seems like they're not budging. Trump is willing to negotiate, but they said no wall.
He's not willing to negotiate.
But Nancy and Chuck, they didn't offer another solution. They didn't say, okay, we'll raise it to $2 billion. They didn't go there.
That's not true.
They didn't go there.
That's not true. They have offered an alternative. They've offered $1.5 billion for border security, which he's rejected.
1.5 was a starting point. It wasn't 2. They didn't say, we'll give you 500 million more. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying.
The budget is not a negotiation point with the president. The president recommends, and the Congress makes those decisions.
Okay, so realistically speaking, I think this is going to happen. There is going to be no solution, no negotiation from this point on. I think they're not going to budge, especially Nancy and Chuck. They're not going to budge. So I think Trump is going to. He's in this Texas border today, right? Trump said on Thursday today he's going to go to the border and to show the American people how much of a national crisis this is. And I think he knew that they wouldn't budge. So this whole thing was his way of he's a reality TV star. Former reality TV star. So I think this was a dramatic play for him. He knew what was going to come out, but he wanted to do this primetime TV delivery 8-minute delivery about the crisis that's going on in on the southern border, and then they rebut it, right? And Nancy and Chuck, and today he's going to the Texas border, and I think he's going to probably declare national emergency. I think around next week. That's what I think. I think probably the longest shutdown was 21 days during the Clinton era. I think it's going to probably pass that. He's going to make that record, and I think he's going to declare a national emergency, and he's going to announce that we're going to make a border wall through the budget of the defense budget. So I think then lawsuit will be filed. It will go to the probably Ninth Circuit, you know, their favorite, the Democrats' favorite circuit court. It will go there, and then I think it will go to the U.S. Supreme Court, and it will be flipped, because we're going to go to that next point, next topic, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think it's right now 5-4, right? Conservative 5 justices, liberal 4 justices. So I think Trump will get that wall. That's how I see it. What do you think?
I don't see it that way. I believe if he decides to shift funds from the military budget to the wall, that will be challenged. I believe that any reasonable federal court would stay his decision until the legal issues are resolved, and those will be dragged out for a very long time.
Okay.
And an election is coming. The one thing that's very clear at this point is that Donald Trump is losing public opinion on the shutdown. The longer the shutdown and those services impact more people, the more he will lose on that one. He's the guy who said, "I'm happy to shut it down." So it's possible that whether he'll actually be able to get it before the next presidential race is questionable. Obviously, the potential change on the Supreme Court is, it could be severe. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is ill. She's 85 years old. I say a prayer for her every day and wish her long life. I think it would be really unfortunate for the country to have such a tectonic shift in the politics of the Supreme Court, particularly since they've been appointing conservative activists to the court in recent years.
But anyway, you were saying that the president will take the hit for this entire shutdown. That's what you're saying, right?
At the moment, at least what I saw in the news today, that over 50% of the people are holding him accountable.
Okay, yeah, because he is the president, so of course, on the natural instinct will be, blaming the president. I would say that. So let's move on to our.
But just going back to that, that's not always the case, because back in 1996 or 98, the Republican Congress, it's the ones who are holding the budget hostage. In that case, it was Newt Gingrich and the Republican Congress who held it hostage to the president. This time, it's Trump.
But back then, there was also another issue, right? The impeachment thing also hurt the Republican Party big time too. I think during the presidential election.
So all those things have to be taken into consideration.
Okay, so let's move on to our next topic. I think this was a topic that you touched a little bit. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She has not appeared in a Supreme Court argument for 3 days in a row. Right. Her absences this week from oral arguments were her first since joining the court in 1993. What do you think about this?
Well, she had cancer. She had surgery to remove cancer. Yeah. The reports that I heard was that the procedure went well, and there's no reason to believe that she won't recover, although she's 85 years old. So something like that is very difficult for somebody that old. The fact that she's been out for the last few days, they said that her recovery could take a couple of months, but she is working, she's reading briefs, she'll be able to participate in decisions, she just won't be in the room. And so I think all of us agree that we wish.
And she also broke three ribs, right, last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, she broke 3 ribs, and
so
this is from Politico. Okay, Politico is not a right-wing website. You agree, right? So Trump, White House urging allies to prepare for possible RBG departure. RBG, who's a nickname for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So after an ailing Supreme Court Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg missed oral arguments, the Trump team began early groundwork for another potential confirmation battle. I think it's going to happen. I'll be honest with you.
Well, a couple things. One, if they're making that information public, I think that's tacky. You have a living human being who's provided great service to this country, who is in ill health right now, and it doesn't seem appropriate to be speculating on her demise. behind the scenes, the White House, whether it be Trump or any other president, should always have plans about what happens if there's going to be a turnover on the court.
Yeah.
Not only the Supreme Court, but the Court of Appeals and the District Court. You should have succession planning practices in place. So I think if they're putting that word out there, I find that troubling. If they're doing things quietly behind the scenes, that's what they're supposed to do.
I mean, we don't want to wish ill on anybody. I mean, I want to be clear on that. And you said you pray for her every day. I heard from HBO's Bill Maher. He said we need to give her all the best medicines in the world and all the Chinese medicine, whatever, to lengthen her life. I think her health is in a very poor condition. That's the feeling that I get. And I saw her even during the State of the Union speeches, and she falls asleep, right? I mean, it was caught on TV camera. To me, it just seems like she's not up there right now.
She still seems to be. Maybe she slept, but she's still sharp as a tack. There's a lot of rumbling prior to Obama leaving office. In the couple of years leading up to it, a lot of folks felt that she should resign to give him an opportunity to replace her, knowing that she's getting up there.
Probably she should have.
You don't really want Supreme Court justices to be considering politics.
Yeah, I know.
But the Supreme Court has unfortunately become more political. The right likes to talk about activist liberal judges. Well, I'll tell you, I think conservative judges are much more activist than a liberal ever was.
But you like what Anthony Kennedy did or John Roberts did, right? John Roberts voted for Obamacare, and
I think Kennedy and
Anthony Kennedy voted for same-sex marriage. So.
As a general theory, I think they did things I was pleased about. Anthony Kennedy, in particular, was less doctrinaire. They voted on a lot of things they thought were egregious, like Citizens United.
The impression that I get, I don't think they were playing politics. Like even John Roberts, he voted for Obamacare, right? I don't think they were like playing politics that way.
I don't believe.
I don't like it, but
I don't agree with most of John Roberts' views. I don't believe he was a political appointment per se. He was a conservative jurist, reflective of the president who appointed him. I think Kavanaugh and Gorsuch are political hacks. I think they are.
Why do you say that?
Well, Kavanaugh.
Brett Kavanaugh has been lauded. Even back, I remember reading papers back in the 2000s, that this person could be a future Supreme Court justice pick. Even though if it wasn't Donald Trump in the Oval Office, if it was somebody else, they would have still picked him.
Why was he a hack? He was one of the people who coordinated the Brooks Brothers riots back in 2000, when the Florida recount was happening in the Bush versus Gore race. He was a guy who was in the White House. He was the one who was responsible for writing justifying opinions for some of the more egregious political policies that George Bush came up with.
Are you talking about?
Including about things like.
I know that the Democrats don't like Brett Kavanaugh because he was involved in that special counsel team back in the 90s, right? During that impeachment process.
Kavanaugh was not an arm's length professional jurist. He was a Republican hitman as a staffer.
Yeah, I don't see him that way.
And that's how I see him. And I think.
What do you think about then RBG?
I think he demonstrated himself during his confirmation hearings that he was a political hack.
No, because
when he attacked the Democrats.
I believe they were falsely accusing him for something that he did not do. We're going back to what happened months ago.
Well, he is guilty of all those things.
With Dr. Blasey Ford, I think Blasey Ford lied.
She didn't lie.
That's my opinion.
She didn't lie, but Kavanaugh lied.
No, she lied.
Kavanaugh lied, and he had tons of documentation and evidence of people that demonstrated that this guy was a political hack, that he was a partier in school, which I'm not against, but he lied to cover it up.
But why did she say? Why did she say? Why did?
And when he had a temper tantrum in front of the
he had to
entire
show
world.
Strength. That's what I think. Because the entire media was against him.
But he's going to be a Supreme Court justice. We want them to demonstrate that they have the temperament.
But what if you are?
A good
I don't
judge.
think anybody would like it if you are accused of sexually assaulting. I mean, in this case, he almost sexually assaulted. That's what she has been saying, right? But how come she said she never knew anything about a lie detector during the hearing? But one of her former boyfriends sent a letter to Congress and said, you know, she was an expert. She trained her friend who eventually became an FBI agent to pass a lie detector test.
Because he sexually
she
harassed...
should be actually prosecuted, that's what I think.
Because he sexually harassed this woman when he was in college, he then lied about it and tried to cover it up. He then had a temper tantrum where he demonstrated his political baseness before the Congress of the United States.
I would say that is a reasonable thing. I mean, you didn't like his temperament, right? I mean, he should have been more mellow,
when you were appointed,
even killed,
when you're
right?
appointed to be a Supreme Court justice, you have to represent everybody, and he made it clear that he did not represent people on the left.
He made it clear that he doesn't want to be falsely accused. That's how I saw it.
He could have done that in a million different ways without ever demonstrating that he's got an anger management problem.
We opened a can of worms with the Brett Kavanaugh. I know that, you know, this whole Kavanaugh issue was controversial, but if we go back to RBG, what if she decides to resign, or because of her health, or she, you know, what if she does that? Do you think then Trump will appoint? You know, Trump has to appoint another judge to become the new U.S. justice, and that will be number 3, U.S. Supreme Court Justice 3. That would make it 6-3. What is your thought on that?
Well, I think,
that's a possibility out there. That's what I think.
Of course, it's a possibility, but I don't think she would resign.
Okay.
I think that she is somebody who cares enough about this country and the direction that we're going. She recognizes that if she's resigned, the fundamental nature of the Supreme Court will change. I think she will stay in that position until she is called home. And that might mean that she's less able to participate in the decisions in the months or years ahead, but I do not think she will leave on her own.
So you believe that she's going to stay in, you think she's going to come back and bench? I heard that Monday there's another hearing. All eyes are on the court, whether she's going to show up or not.
Here's what I think logic indicates. She had surgery.
Yeah.
She's at an age where the surgery is serious.
Yes.
We need to give her 2 or 3 months to recover, and if she returns in 2 or 3 months and begins working again, then this issue is somewhat moot.
Do you think there should be an age limit? Because we always pay attention to these people's health, right? All the time, right?
I believe that we should actually consider perhaps an age limit or even a term limit, maybe a 20-year appointment. Mm-hmm. But I think at the time they wanted to make lifetime appointments to ensure that justices would not be overly politicized. So we're at that point now where it's clear that they're being politicized. So we should at least put them on for a long period of time where they can be insulated, but it should be finite. We should have, at the same time, we've had a lot of justices who were up in their 80s and 90s, and even if they were still bright, some of them were not as effective. We probably don't want to have a bunch of 95-year-olds.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on that. So there's another news. I think didn't you get endorsed by Kamala Harris?
I did.
Well, your good friend Kamala Harris, she announced that she's going to run for president today. Did you hear about that?
I did not hear it. No.
And I wanted to get your opinion on that. So this is breaking news. For you,
I
right?
think I'm a big fan and supporter of Senator Harris. She's a charismatic and has been a leader. She's been very effective as District Attorney of San Francisco, Attorney General of California. She's pretty new in the Senate, just been there for 2 years. Yeah. But she's...
and I know that you're worried about those things, people who don't have enough experience running for president. You kind of criticize that point on Obama.
Yeah, I think she... well, she does have more experience at this point than Obama did at similar time. She's served in a major state for 10 years now.
She was the Attorney General too, right? Yeah.
So 2 years in the U.S. Senate, 8 years as Attorney General, representing the largest state in the union. I think she has a message that will resonate with a lot of people in this country. She is clearly an attractive candidate for a whole.
She's attractive looking too. I mean, I don't know whether
she's aesthetically attractive, but she's also charismatically attractive. She's a good speaker. She's been very outspoken, particularly on issues that Democrats care about. She will be a top-tier candidate.
You want to vote for her? you got to think about it. The other.
Well, it's a little bit premature. I'm not ready to jump on any bandwagons just yet.
I know that the political world, she endorsed you, so I think she's going to definitely probably ask a lot of endorsements too.
I'm certain that will be the case.
Okay, all right. Well, that's our show for today. Our show is not about left or right. It's about right or wrong. To stay up to date with our latest videos, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.